It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege and honor to interview the former Canada snowboarder, Natalie Allport. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in the sport of snowboarding?
Yeah, I grew up playing all different sports. My main sport growing up was hockey, but I also started skateboarding pretty young too. I think I was like 8 years old. Not really sure what got me into it, but somehow saved up for like a year to buy my first little like $18 mini X Games skateboard. Started getting into that, and then my family, we were kind of a ski family when we were young, but then unfortunately we moved from the West Coast to the East Coast. We started getting a little bit back into it, and then I just traded my skis in for a snowboard one day because all the kids in my class were doing that, and just never looked back.
What was that like getting started at the age of 12 and going from hockey to snowboarding?
Yeah, I got started late. Like what you see, like pro snowboarders now are 12 years old. It's pretty crazy. But it was just a fun transition. I think, now I think a lot about the transitions in my life as an adult, but when you're a kid, it's kind of you're just pursuing whatever you love the most. And so at the time I was starting to love snowboarding the most and ended up transitioning over.
How's that like joining the Canada Junior Olympic team in 2014?
Yeah, well, it's funny enough, it was newly formed because they announced, I guess it was Sochi would be the first Olympics to host slopestyle snowboarding. So before then, there was no like direct path to actually qualify for the national team or the junior national team or like any national team program for slopestyle specifically. So that summer I was out, I was training out west. I had met like the national team half pipe coach, made some connections, and then all of a sudden I got a text from a friend like when I was back home, and they're like, did you see that you got named to the junior national team? And I was like, there's a junior national team? I had absolutely no idea. So I guess just my results from the past season helped me qualify, but at the time when I was actually getting those results, there was no idea that it would lead to that.
Of course, what was that like competing in the World Cup in 2014?
Yeah, so, well, my first World Cup was not a great experience. I ended up actually just getting my spot because one of my friends broke I think her elbow or her arm. So I got like a last minute spot. And then in my warm-up run, I ended up exploding my heel. So I had to go through like a year-long recovery process. I was continuing to try to compete throughout the season, but kept re-injuring it. So I continued to go to a lot of different events after that, but unfortunately, it wasn't the greatest introduction to the World Cup circuit.
Of course, after that moment, what was that like going from the juniors to the seniors?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I competed two years at the at Junior World Cups and stuff like that, and then yeah, competing up or sorry, at Junior World Championships, and then World Cups are all senior. So yeah, competing with people that you have up on magazines on your wall, on posters and things like that, it's definitely like a little bit of shell shock. I remember being like 18 and texting my mom being like, remember that poster I've had on my wall like throughout my childhood? Like that girl is standing right behind me and we're competing against each other right now. So you have to like very quickly adjust, and also very quickly adjust from going to like trying to get top 10s and podiums and winning competitions to like fighting for top 30s, top 20s. It's a really humbling experience.
What was the training like to prepare for the World Cup in 2014?
Yeah, well, it's really just snowboarding every single day, like morning to night, just snowboarding as much as you can. And then, of course, doing stuff in the gym to prevent injury, get stronger, just become a little bit more explosive, and trampoline training in the off season so that you can kind of work at your air awareness.
Of course, how was that feeling like the first time you got to put on your uniform and have the Canada maple leaf flag?
Yeah, it's really cool. I grew up playing hockey, as I mentioned, and so my dream was to be part of the national hockey team when I was a kid. And then when I transitioned over to snowboarding, I wasn't sure if I would, get the opportunity to be part of a national team program or anything like that, because at the time my discipline wasn't an Olympic sport. And so having it be in there, getting to, represent your country and be part of different things like that at competitions around the world, it's just such a special experience. And knowing, there's only a few of you who are out there and getting to represent is just always an honor.
Of course, how did you take some of the stuff that you learned on the ice hockey side and in the rink to the slopes and for snowboarding?
I think, snowboarding is an individual sport, but hockey, you learn a lot about teamwork and, how to get along with different people who are, on a hockey team, you have like 20 plus people and you're not going to be super similar to every single person. You're going to get along with them at varying levels. There's going to be, different groups and things like that. And so you're able to kind of make friends on the road as well in snowboarding within the community of other countries, but also within your team and support each other despite the fact that you're competing individually. So I think kind of that teamwork and relationship aspect that you learn from team sports, it transitions over as well just to having a more positive experience while you're traveling and competing as an individual sport athlete.
Of course, throughout your career, what were some of your biggest accomplishments on the snowboarding side?
Yeah, I think my first junior world championships, I got ninth place. And for me personally, I was really hoping for a better result, but I had the highest result of any Canadian woman at that event. So I was the top ranked Canadian. So that was really cool. Unfortunately, I say it went downhill from there, but no, I had all of a sudden I was getting thrown into like competing against the senior level and dealing with injuries and all these things after that. But that was really a cool experience from going from someone who had no coach, had no idea, had never been to the bigger mountains, had no idea how any of these competitions ran. Just a year before that, there was actually no national team program for slopestyle yet. And then all of a sudden getting this top Canadian result was really, really special. So I would say probably that was one of my favorite moments as at least part of those 4 seasons.
Of course, in spite of the injuries, how did you keep the motivation to keep competing?
I just love for the sport. I think, even now that I don't compete anymore, I still love snowboarding. I still go every single week and I still, of course, I take it a little bit easier. I don't want to injure myself for my other sports, for just my life in general, but I still push it and just know that I could get injured doing this. It's obviously a dangerous sport, but I really enjoy it. And so it's worth the risk for me. So it was very similar to that of just, I really want to get back on my snowboard. I want to be out there with my friends. I want to keep progressing. And so just stayed motivated to always be recovering, rehabbing, and doing what I could during the times I was dealing with injuries.
What was that feeling like going down the slopes and getting to represent Team Canada?
Yeah, just awesome. It's really cool when you have your name announced, right? And people are cheering. And I think that's just, it's a feeling that we all seek as athletes, is to kind of have the spotlight on you and, have that attention and feel that pressure. It's like an honor to have that pressure. I love the quote, like, pressure is a privilege, and it truly is. And so when you get to experience it, it's just a really cool moment.
What was that like getting to compete in the rivalry between Canada and US and other countries?
Yeah, I mean, with snowboarding, I feel like the rivalry is a little bit less. Everyone's kind of friends, which is, it's really unique to other sports, right? So, I'm cheering for other people when I see them out there. I'm like, wow, they're landing this trick. They're pushing me to try something new, and vice versa. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that the rivalry was too much, but it is kind of, it is kind of fun to, at least in an individual sport, also have that team aspect where you're like, okay, I'm representing Team Canada and I'm cheering for the rest of my teammates and I want them to do well versus the other countries and the other people as well.
What was that like, obviously, getting to compete against some of those teams in, for example, with US and having Faye Clockley right against you competing?
Yeah, well, I mean, the US riders are obviously amazing. We have amazing Canadian riders as well. But yeah, it's always fun, like going to different events and seeing everybody from all the different countries and getting to make new friends. And, it's like every time you go to a different I guess, competition, you see the same people, and you kind of like build those friendships, and you get to like see where you rank, this time. So that's always fun.
What were some of your routines and rituals on competition day?
Oh yeah, like the night before, I I would always watch like Blue Crush. It's like a surfing movie. I don't know how that started, but it's just like kind of a lighthearted movie that was a little kind of motivational in a way. But yeah, just watching something the night before. Usually the morning of, I feel a little bit nervous, but just maybe checking in with my family and like getting those text messages out of the way, because I know I probably won't be on my phone actually during the competition. Listening to some good music on competition days. I often listen to the same song over and over and over. So it was just like, getting that song in my ear, making sure I have everything ready, and then just getting in the zone.
Of course, how is that feeling like going down the slopes and being in your head and knowing how to go down the slopes properly?
Yeah, you get in a flow state with the sport of snowboarding, and with a lot of action sports, because there's that element of danger that you really can't be somewhere else. You have to be in that exact moment, otherwise something could go very wrong, which has definitely happened to most of us at some point or other in our careers. But yeah, it's just really cool. Like actually now there's a few different moments in my, like, while I was snowboarding that I can go back to in my head, because it was such a flow state moment. It's like ingrained in my memory, and I can like visually go back to how it felt, how it looked, like everything, all the sensory information from those moments. And so yeah, just being in a flow state, and it really pushes you to be really present in the moment.
Who are some of the people that you look up to in the snowboarding community?
Everyone, I think, yeah, anyone in the snowboarding community I look up to, because everyone's out there pushing and risking their bodies and their lives out there, just sending it and being supportive and pushing it. So yeah, really everyone, like especially when you get to that World Cup or World Junior Championships or whatever that level is, like you respect everyone out there. And even just like riding around your small local resort, like I notice people doing something, or you see like this younger girl who's trying something, and that inspires me to like push myself a little bit more. So everybody who's part of it and who's just being a nice person and pushing themselves in their own way is just inspiring to watch, and pushes you to go harder.
Of course, how is that like, obviously having people look up to you and be inspired by you and what you've accomplished?
Yeah, it's really cool, because I know how much of an impact that made for me growing up. I mean, I grew up having photos of so many athletes on my walls. I had their quotes. Like I would read things and be like, oh wow, like this mindset that they had, or this quote that they said really resonates, it motivates me. And I would make collages and put it up there. And then so all of a sudden realizing, that people might be doing the same thing with me and my story, it's extremely humbling. And also it's like a level of responsibility of, feeling like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm sharing the reality, and being real, and putting out the messages that are important to me, because I do know people are watching.
Who are some of the most influential people in your career that have shaped you into the snowboarder that you are?
My coaches for sure, and then also I had a few different older snowboarders, like when I was like a teenager, I suppose. I was lucky to meet some amazing women snowboarders who were local to me, who were like 10 years my elder, and they would kind of put me under their wing and drive me to the mountain. And even though they weren't necessarily competing, or at the top level, or they were at a higher level when they were a little bit younger and things like that, they were just kind of supportive of me being in snowboarding, and would kind of talk with my parents and ease that so that I could get a drive to the mountain and different things like that. So yeah, I was really lucky to have just like older riders in the community locally who took me under their wing and would give me drives and just advice, and just let me hang out with them.
Of course, for my listeners that don't know the sport of snowboarding, can you explain what it is?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different disciplines within snowboarding. There's kind of the freestyle side and the race side. And it's funny because a lot of times people will ask me, oh, like I know this racer. I'm like, I have no idea who they are, because unfortunately, like we didn't really mix that much, because if you go to a competition, often it's only the freestyle disciplines. And then another competition at a whole different location will be only the race disciplines, because the courses are entirely different. So I was on the freestyle side. So that's where you're doing like all you're judged by like a point system. So you have judges versus score time, and you're judged by, you know, the difficulty of the tricks you're doing. So for me, I was doing slopestyle snowboarding, which is all the rails and the jumps kind of in a row. You might have like 3 jumps and 3 sets of like rail things that you're sliding across. It sounds kind of crazy when you break it down, but yeah, and then you get judged based on the difficulty of your tricks, like the flow of the run, you know, what trick are you doing into the next trick? Also your style, like how cool do you make it look? You know, how are you grabbing? Are you grabbing it, you know, to the last minute? Are you kind of like almost falling in the air? Like, what are you doing? And that's kind of what I did. Yeah.
Of course, what was that preparation like? Obviously, as you said, you did more of the tricks and stuff. So what was that preparation like, preparing for tricks for competitions?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, every day you're just riding and you're riding through different terrain parks and stuff like that. So at your local hill or wherever you're doing a training camp, and you're practicing various tricks. So you're making sure that you really have them nailed down, that you can land them, you know, 8 out of 10 times or whatever that percentage is. It's just that you feel confident with them. And then you might practice, you know, kind of longer runs. And then when you go to an actual competition, usually you have a couple days of practice on the course. And so it's knowing you can do those tricks, but you have to get used to the course because all the jumps are going to be different. The features are going to be different. So you have to like plan out, okay, I want to do this trick into this other one and so on and so forth. And if it's not flowing, you might have to make a change. Also, different jumps are, you can go to a competition and the jumps are just not built that well or not built to how you like them. And so you have to really adjust and learn how to adjust within the air and different things to land your tricks and hopefully land your run.
Of course, what was that feeling like the first time you had a fan ask for your autograph and photos?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately at snowboard competitions, funny enough, because they're so like high up the mountain, and unless it's like X Games or something, you don't have that many like fans who know exactly who you are on the sidelines. It's often like all of the team members, like the support teams and things like that, because more often than not, people are watching it on a live stream than actually in person because it's cold. You might have to buy a lift ticket to get up there, different things like that, unless it is like X Games or the Olympics. But I did a few different events like away from the mountain, like an Olympic Day event here in Ottawa and stuff like that. And it was really cool getting to meet kids and having them ask for your autograph. And, you know, when people know who you are, or at least, you know, they meet you on the day of because they're asking for various athletes and they don't know you yet. It is really cool because, again, going back to like when I had athletes on my wall and I was the kid who was asking people for autographs, I just know how that feels. And so it's just really like an honor and a privilege to be on the other side of that.
Of course, what was that transition like from going from being a professional snowboarder to after snowboarding?
Yeah, really difficult. You know, you tie your identity with what you do often, and that's something that I share a lot about now, especially for the next generation of athletes, of trying to separate that a little bit so that the transition is a little bit easier. But I think nobody has that easy transition no matter what, because all of a sudden your day-to-day routine, the way that kind of your brain was looking for a reward system is all completely altered when you leave this sport and you have to find out, you know, what's next and what to do. And especially with snowboarding, it's such a high adrenaline sport. So you're used to that really high stress. You're used to like pushing past these fear moments, kind of having that like inner conflict. And then when you step outside and you don't have that same thing in your life, you know, even just like chemically things are like going on where you're like, okay, where can I seek that next, you know, adrenaline rush or stress or different things. So it's a hard transition for sure.
How is that like, obviously, going from being a snowboarder to getting into the podcast industry and starting the podcast all in?
Yeah, it's fun. I love talking to different people. I mean, when I was snowboarding, it's just so fun to be on the road and talking with your teammates and other athletes and the conversations that you have. And so I think I really miss that in my day-to-day. I mean, I compete in CrossFit now, so I'm hanging around with my training partners and different things like that, but not necessarily, especially during the pandemic, was I always just, you know, having these deep conversations with different people. So being able to reconnect, meet a lot of different people with all different backgrounds and have these you know, really kind of deep therapeutic conversations in a way, you know, just I relate with them and hopefully the listeners relate as well, is it's really fun.
Of course, how has it been like, obviously, getting into coaching snowboarding now that you're not competing?
Yeah, I coached for like one season. It's funny because I actually coached hockey for longer than I coached snowboarding. So when I was growing up, I did coach. I was a snowboard instructor, but not like for competitive teams or anything. It was like people learning how to snowboard for the first time, and that's how I convinced my parents to drive me to the hill all the time. Was like, hey, I'm working. Like I'm not just goofing off with my friends. And so I would always be able to get drives to the mountain that way. But then after high school, I actually volunteered and coached or helped assistant coach my high school hockey team for 4 seasons, and that was really fun, really rewarding. Just a good time to be near the rink and near some of the players. And then I got asked 1 year, I'm trying to remember how many years ago it was now, if I wanted to help out with a local, like it's a boarding school, and they had a snowboard team. And my high school never had a snowboard team, so it was pretty cool that this one did. And they said, yeah, you want to come out? I think it was like every Tuesday throughout the winter, and coach. And I was like, yeah, like that sounds super fun. So I just got to spend my Tuesday afternoons at the mountain with a bunch of kids, just sharing the love of snowboarding and helping them out and seeing them progress, and get better each week. So it's always, I guess, rewarding just being able to help other people achieve their goals or get better at stuff that they love to do, and just witness that passion and be part of the community still.
Of course, what was that like getting to help the youth and getting to help them and learn the tricks that you learned as a snowboarder?
Yeah. It's fun. Yeah, it's just overall really rewarding, just getting to experience watching other people and be like the support for other people that like. I know I had such great support on my side, so being able to be that person in someone else's life is always cool.
Of course, how have you started the All In podcast, and what is that about?
Yeah, especially, well, during the pandemic, I think is when it really restarted. I had actually started it back in like 2017. Unfortunately, things got pretty hectic and I had to put it on pause for a little bit. But then when the pandemic happened, I noticed there was a lot of like negativity, a lot of, people on social media and online all the time, and kind of just, bored at home and not sure what to do, and, just struggling with the change of routine. Maybe their businesses are closed, different things. Obviously, it was a tough time for everybody. But I knew also like all my athlete friends were home, and I was home, and I was, bored, and I wanted to talk with people and have these conversations. And so I started connecting with my friends that I hadn't checked in with in a long time. And we started doing Instagram lives every single week. And then I was like, oh, I should definitely just keep uploading this to the podcast and bring that back. And so then throughout the year, we continued with the Instagram lives, and then as it progressed, it just started growing. I had like agents booking their athletes and their clients on the show, which was really cool. And then we just went to traditional, recording via Zoom, kind of like we are now, having those conversations and building it back out to being the podcast that it is now. And we just talk about like a lot of different things in sports, but a lot of, the stories of different athletes who've gone all in, or experts who've gone all in, and talking about topics like mental health, body image, mindset tips, like everything like that. So it's really just like a deep conversation on things, sports and life. And it's for people who aren't necessarily just athletes or into sports. It's really taking, what people have learned in their life through sports and like making that relatable to anybody wherever they are at in their life. If they have, a goal, hopefully these things can help them get there.
What has that been like, obviously, learning the stories of other former athletes such as yourself through your podcasts?
It's been really therapeutic to have the conversations like every week with various people, like, and then also it's just like a very rewarding, not rewarding, I would say, but it's just like it's always a good feeling when you can relate to people. And so unfortunately, it's unfortunate that so many people can relate with the story of transitioning out of your sport, or falling short of the Olympics, or dealing with mental health stuff in sports. Like it's unfortunate, but it definitely feels better for me knowing that I'm not alone in that. And so hearing it from other athletes, especially other athletes who have accomplished much more than I have, and knowing that they went through the same things, is just it helps me in my own journey, and hopefully it helps people who are listening as well.
Of course, looking back in your snowboarding career, what are some of your fondest memories throughout your career?
I think just all the fun times with the people that you meet. Like, the stories that come to mind are more than the things that happen on the mountain. They're more the things that happened off the mountain. All the like funny stories of running around through the hotels and meeting people from different countries, and like the after parties. Those are always great. And then also just share time with family. Like when my family would get to come to a competition, whether I did well or not, just having their support. Those memories are always really cool too.
What are some of your future plans after snowboarding?
Yeah, so I compete in CrossFit now. So I've been dealing with an injury for the last few years. So hopefully getting back on the competition floor is my goal. Continuing the podcast, continuing to create content. I've been having a lot of fun lately, creating content around various other sports and like getting to go hang out with athletes of different sports. I think that's always really fun for me. I grew up playing like every sport. So there's not a sport that you can name that I don't like. So I'm just always like very interested to hear about other athletes' stories and, learn about their sports and things like that. So hopefully doing more stuff like that.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to get into the sport of snowboarding?
Oof. Well, be prepared for a lot of injuries, but like I would just say, love it, love it. Yeah, like when you love what you do, it makes all those tough times, whether it's dealing with injuries and falls and struggles or the political side of competing in sports and things like that, worth it. So yeah, just from advice, I would just say just continue to try to like, fuel that fire that you have of the love for the sport and the activity, because that'll really carry you through those tough times.
What advice would you give people that are looking to get into snowboarding and represent a national team, whether it's Canada or US?
Yeah, well, so growing up, I didn't have the opportunity to have a coach or anything. I all of a sudden had to hire a coach when I got onto the junior national team and stuff like that. But nowadays, athletes have coaches since day one. So I think to be at that top level now, you don't really see any athletes coming up who don't have coaches or weren't part of some sort of program. It's pretty rare these days. So I would say try to find like some sort of program or coach. It's really unfortunate, but like snowboarding has become a little bit less accessible of a sport. I mean, it's obviously, skiing, snowboarding are expensive. The gear is expensive. To get to the mountain is expensive. I know I was like barely struggling to make ends meet to compete in the sport. And now it's even harder with the fact that you need a coach since you're a kid, basically. But I think that, having a coach is definitely kind of what you need to get to that next level, because that coach is going to know how the system works. They're going to know, what competitions you need to go to. They're going to also help you kind of manage the longevity of your career in a way where you're not just like pushing yourself, trying crazy things with your friends and injuring yourself and putting yourself out of all these competitions that you need to do to get to the next level. They're going to really help you build a strong foundation so that you have those like basic things dialed that you can keep building off of. That's actually my first season. When I first started working with a coach, we had to go back to the basics, like literally relearning how to turn, because I just hadn't had that coaching before. So I think it's valuable to like have that ingrained in you when you're younger, because it'll prevent some injuries and it'll just make sure that you can, keep building those skills higher.
What advice would you give those people such as yourself that is transitioning from being a professional athlete to getting into the corporate world, whether it's the podcast industry or even anything in the corporate world?
Yeah, just trust the skills that you've learned. I know a lot of athletes finish their sports and then they don't think that they have any transferable skills. They feel like they may be behind because they didn't do maybe traditional school, or they don't have the same, internships and work experience as people who are already a little bit further ahead in their careers. But just as an athlete, you have to be adaptable. Like you have to have a hard work ethic. Like you have to have, patience to have been doing your sport for like 10 plus years to wait for the success to finally pay off and all these things. So just trust like the skills that you've learned and trust your ability to learn. I think that's the biggest thing with anyone. And you see that when you see, entrepreneurs who start amazing businesses and they had no idea about the business before they went in, but they trusted their ability to learn along the way. So I think if you can go in with that mindset, like anybody, whether you're transitioning as an athlete or into a new career or starting a business, just trust that you can learn along the way.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Yeah, just at Natalie Allport. I think on pretty much every platform.
Thank you again, Natalie Allport, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as you begin the journey in the podcast industry.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Natalie Allport, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.